Target tank. Of course, helicopters have been around since officially called the UH-1 and a product of Bell Helicopter Textron at Fort Worth. It was first flown in 1956. Like all good airplanes, it grew in power and capability, and most of the Hueys in Vietnam could carry up to 14 troops and an assortment of guns and rockets. They could fly at a steady 110 knots, or 127 miles per hour. And throughout the Vietnam War, the U.S. Army and other services used the Huey for just about everything, though their main role was as a troop carrier in the air cavalry. Like many helicopters, the Huey's big two-bladed main rotor creates a distinctive pulsating, thumping sound called a rotor slap, which can be heard on the ground some time before the helicopter comes into view. Surprise was therefore out of the question, and it became standard practice to keep the enemy's head down by spraying the whole area with machine gun fire. One of the standard weapons was the 7.62mm M60, which fired at a cyclic rate of 550 rounds per minute. It was fed by 100-round ammunition belts. The other standard weapon was the 2.75-inch rocket, fired from a 7-tube launcher. Used by the million in Vietnam, the 2.75-inch rocket had no guidance, but was stabilized by fins, which flick open to make it spin rapidly in flight. Even so, compared to the M60, it was not a precision weapon. It was fine for firing into suspected hideouts, for instance along the Mekong waterways. But if you tried to hit a specific target, such as a small boat, there might be 30 misses before one lucky hit. However, in support of riverline patrols, the guns and rockets of the Sea Wolves Hueys prevented the enemy having free use of the waterway. Different weapons were fitted to the Hueys, such as the M60 in its infantry form, with a stock and pistol grip, but fed by the same 100-round belts. Vast quantities of 7.62mm rounds and 2.75-inch rockets were fired in Vietnam, in ground strafing missions very similar to those flown by fixed-wing aircraft during both World Wars. It was commonly said that the firepower of a rocket salvo was like a barrage from 38 howitzers or a broadside from a Navy cruiser. But it has to be remembered that the rocket is still an imprecise scattergun type of weapon. Putting guns and rockets on the Huey had made it obvious that a purpose-built armed helicopter could be an important weapon in its own right. Lockheed got the job, but produced a helicopter so complex and expensive that it never went into production. Neither did the Sikorsky proposal, the S-67. Meanwhile, the armed Hueys had to soldier on. However, back at Fort Worth, Texas, Bell quickly used company funds to put the Huey's engine and rotors onto a slim, fighter-like fuselage, seating a weapons operator in the nose with the pilot above and behind him. There was no cabin, and the Model 209, or AH-1, Huey Cobra, was devoted entirely to sensors and weapons. It was just what the Army needed, and soon hundreds were being rushed to Vietnam. Quickly assembled and checked out, some AH-1Gs were in action a day after arriving. Popularly called the Snake, the AH-1G was equipped with a powered chin turret fitted with various mixes of machine guns or 40mm grenade launchers. On each side, there was a stub wing carrying 4 pylons for forward-firing rockets, guns, or later, guided missiles. Straight away, the Cobras began escorting the Hueys. As they neared the landing zone, the slim Cobras would race on ahead and soften up the surrounding area. Usually, the wing pylons would carry rocket launchers, the maximum load being 4 launchers with 19 rocket tubes each, a total of 76 missiles. As well as the General Electric minigun in the chin turret, additional machine guns were carried on the stub wings. In order to shield the landing zone, a smoke screen could be laid down. The Hueys wouldn't hang about. Sometimes the troops would leave the helicopters without their even touching the ground. After the troop carriers had gone, the Cobras would stay to provide close support for the freshly inserted troops. Any pockets of enemy resistance would be reported to the ground commander, who could call up the Cobras and give them an exact target at which to fire. A rocket salvo with fragmentation warheads could be devastating, and the minigun could saw big trees in half. The only really vulnerable part of the Cobra was the crew, operating behind a thin canopy, though their seats and side panels were armored. Early AH-1Gs were limited in their ability to operate at night or in bad weather. But later Marine Corps AH-1Js not only had upgraded equipment, but also twin engines. The Marines lost 17 machines in 1967 due to engine problems, but the twin-pack engine enabled the Sea Cobra to return to base even with one power unit knocked out. The Sea Cobra's turret mounted a 3-barrel 20mm cannon, while the Army's AH-1G often appeared with an M35 subsystem, adding a forward-firing 6-barrel cannon with 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Later, General Electric produced a universal turret able to mount a 20 or a 30mm gun, giving great hitting power and range. The Vietnam War, therefore, saw the first introduction of dedicated ground attack helicopters. Their value was immeasurable, but they had not yet developed into modern tank busters.